Military Mindset for Business, the podcast for the veteran business community. This week, chatting to Edward Plant, an amazing business coach. 17 years as an Army engineer. He's taken his vast experiences, whether it be in Papua New Guinea or on deployment in Iraq, and used some of those really fundamental military principles to start a great coaching business called the Business League. I've been personally doing some work with Edward one-on-one, and I am loving it. So let's get into it and have a chat with Edward Plant from the Business League. Welcome to the Military Mindset for Business podcast, which is the podcast for the veteran business community. I'm Pete Liston, and today I've got Edward Plant from the Business League. G'day, Edward. How are you?
Hey, Pete. Great to be here. Yeah, I'm really well, thanks.
Now, I first got introduced to Ed. Well, not technically introduced. I was at a conference or a convention up in Brisbane, and I met a guy, and I was like, oh, yeah, just got chatting, and I was used to be in the Army. And this bloke said, hey, my business coach used to be in the Army. And I was like, what? I didn't know of any ex-military business coach people. And I was really keen to find out who this guy was. That was probably about 6 months or so ago, Edward.
Yeah, I think it's probably getting on to 8, 9. I think it's probably September last year.
So in terms of where we've been on our humble little journey together is a really quick intro to Ed, understand the kind of work that he does. He's come and joined the veteran business community. But more importantly, I have got into Ed's program, and I've literally been participating and getting a lot personally and professionally out of it, which is why I needed to get Ed along to have a chat and to sort of share more of his journey. So, mate, less of me, more of you. Tell us a little about where you grew up and what was it that got you into the military?
So I grew up in Townsville, and everyone said, oh, is that what made you join the Army? And it was like, no, not at all. My world didn't cross with the Army. My mum's dad was in the British Army and got quite high up in it, and he ended up getting knighted for the work he did in Italy after World War II for his repatriation of the country and all of that. So I was always sort of intrigued by the Army, but being really honest, when I was at high school, the Army came round and they talked about these scholarships, and one of the guys a year ahead of me got $1,000. And after he got presented, I went to him and said, yeah, and this is like 30 years ago. I said, what did you have to do for that? And he's like, nothing, mate. I just applied and they just gave it to me. And I'm like,
easy $1,000.
That. So I said, how do I do that? And he said, I just reach out, do this. And I went and did that. And they said, nah, we don't have any more. Because I think I was going into year 12. Yep. We don't have any for year 12. We do it in year 11 or something like that. And I couldn't get one. But they said, but you could apply to go to the academy. So ADFA. I said, okay, what does that entail? And they said, oh, well, you do a bit of testing here. And then if you get selected, you get flown down to Brisbane for an interview. And it takes about a day and a half. I was like, oh, okay, I could go to Brisbane.
Free plane ride? What? Is this a holiday on the government expense?
16 years old, on my own, happy days. And so I really just joined because I got a free trip to Brisbane. So I got the trip to Brisbane, but then at the end of year 12, I went away to Europe for a couple of months, and the offer from the Army was there for me, but Mum and Dad wouldn't own it. The Army was saying he's got to make a decision. The day I got back was the last day I could decide, and I sort of had to make a decision on it and decided to jump.
Here we are. Well, it's funny. Townsville is where I joined the Army from. So before I joined the Army, I was a bit of a vagabond farmer, and I was working in Emerald in central Queensland, just doing grape work. I had a mate that was in Tuareg. I went and visited him up in Townsville, which is, I think it's only an 8 or 10 hour drive, or whatever it is. Yeah. Not very far in Queensland terms. And then I was just loving his kit, like he was a digger, infantry private, and I was just loving his pack and that kind of stuff. And I was like, maybe I should join the Army. And I was 29 at the time and living in a caravan. So I walked into Townsville recruiting and expected to just join up and did a bit of testing. And then 12 months later, drove the caravan to Canberra and parked it in the front yard, and away we go. So, and I always just wanted, I loved living in Townsville, to be honest. I thought it was an excellent city. And even though, like you, had nothing to do with the military there, I always just expected to get back there, but I never got back there.
Yeah, my one of my reasons for joining was to get out of Townsville,
Yeah.
which is a bit ironic.
I,
And
I
on
joined
my
to come
first
back.
posting, I got the choice between Townsville and Darwin, and I chose Darwin because I didn't want to go back because it was
Yeah.
still too close. And that decision then meant that I didn't get to go to Timor. So I was
Yeah,
right
yeah.
in that when I was on that first posting was just in the lead up to Timor, engineer unit in Darwin, engineer unit in Townsville. The Townsville one got the gig and went through. And by the time all that Townsville stuff had happened, I was on my next posting out of Darwin. So I got 2 years of hosting every single going to Timor, getting all the money and the medals, and we were just facilitating them.
Right. So, engineer, tell us about your engineer career.
So did my civil engineering degree, moved into obviously went to the Corps of Engineers, did my ROBC, and then got the offer to be plant troop commander, which because my last name's Plant sort of made
Yeah.
sense.
Oh, perfect. I never even clicked with that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was all funny. Like we did a heap of exercises, and when we were building the roads or whatever, we'd close them off so that people wouldn't come and trash them with their lavs or whatever. And one day the CO of 2CAV was driving through one of our roads, and one of the diggers is like, "Hey, get off our site." And the CO sticks his head out and goes, "Who's your boss?" And they said, "Lieutenant Plant." I'm like, "No, well, not what troop are you in? Who's your boss?" And CO got stuck into the digger, and he's just going, "No, that's his name." Um, so yeah, it sort of made
Fantastic.
sense. So support squadron. Um, from there, I went over to Papua New Guinea and did 2 years of engineering over with the Papua New Guinea Defence Force, which was
All right.
pretty amazing. I was pretty
Where were
young
you based over there?
in Lae in Morobe province,
Lay is the north coast. Is that right?
sort of the east coast, sort of middle south of Madang. The old
Yeah, yep.
Black Hat track goes down in there into Salamanca. Um,
Okay. Yeah, look, I see you now. Yeah, looking at the coast there. So almost like directly up from Moresby, if
yeah,
I'm having a look on the map.
by the way,
And
yeah.
what was that experience like? 2 years is a significant amount of your life to be living in New Guinea.
Oh, it was phenomenal. Um, I've just had my tea delivered, so excuse me.
Perfect.
Um, yeah, I was young, like I would have been 25 years old.
Yep.
And it was a whole nother world. Like, um, professionally, the work was amazing, like working with the Papua New Guinea Defence Force, doing some really cool projects. I got um, a 6 week engineer exchange. We built and created that and had the first one happen while I was there, which was an engineer unit, came over for 6 weeks, did a heap of engineer works with the Papua New Guineans. So they worked together and we got to rebuild a lot of their infrastructure. So
Mm.
barracks accommodation got completely redone, which went from being third world, horrendous, no sewerage to habitable by Australians.
Yep.
Um, and some really cool projects there. Personally, though, like Wild Wild West and drinking and driving and just going wherever you want, doing whatever you want, um, and having a pretty fun time.
Single fella at the time. It must have been amazing, just
Yes,
time of life, mate. So
yeah,
tell me about did you ever get across to any of the other islands like Bougainville or Rabaul?
yeah. Rabaul, yeah. The volcano had been there recently before we went over. Did that up into the highlands, Mendy. I think I was in Wewak when 9/11 happened,
All right.
and there'd just been a earthquake, and I was up there doing some inspections and stuff for their barracks up there. Um, so yeah,
Well, I have not been to Papua New Guinea yet, but I've been talking to a couple of mates, and we do have the yeah, I'm not as quite as fit as I was when I joined the army. I'm the same weight, but it seems to have just dropped about a foot from my shoulders to my belly. But I am, using it as a bit of a motivation. We're going to do Kokoda track next year.
Yeah,
So, May, June, we're still to lock in the dates. That's a nice little milestone for me to walk that ground.
yeah,
So
it's pretty
did you ever?
amazing. Like, I never did Kokoda because it was closed when I was there,
Yep.
because a couple of um, European backpackers had been raped, and it
Mm,
was pretty significant. So it was all closed, but I did some amazing walks down through Alatau and stuff like that. And one of them was we were reconnaissing a road that we were going to put in, like a 50-kilometer road. And the first recce party went in, took a guy that only had one eye, and these peaks that they were walking on were like that wide and 70 degrees down. And because
yeah.
he had one eye, he had no depth perception, so he had to crawl across the top of this um, peaks for like 3 days, and a 3 day recce took him seven, and they couldn't get any data from it because they were just managing him. So I had to go back and redo it again for the troop. Um, but like I was the first white person people had seen in the middle of nowhere. We got helicoptered in and walked out. It was just, yeah, pretty amazing experience in life.
And it's funny, like whenever we leave Australia, we just zip over. I must have had 40 international flights, just zip over PNG, zip over PNG. Yet it is our closest neighbor just around the corner there. So I got to get over there and tick the box next year. But mate,
Some amazing
again,
scuba diving, amazing walks, like scenery. It's just spectacular. And
and we
fishing.
may, and I'm not an expert on Papua New Guinea and politics, but it's possible maybe that Bougainville might even be the newest country in the world one day.
Yeah.
I don't think
Mm.
anyway. That's another story for another time. So engineer corps, how many years did you do in the army?
17.
Okay,
So
a fair stint.
seven, 17 when I joined, and I was 17 years old when I joined, and 17 years later I got out.
Yeah, fantastic. Half of your life.
Half of my life. I've done half my life. Yeah.
What
I'm
was the
now
trigger?
just nearing the next 17 years out of the army, which will
Yeah,
be, I mean, it's third before army, third in army, third out of army.
mate, the best is yet to come. Hey,
Yeah.
what made you want to get out?
So I must have been in about my 15th, 16th year. Worked like most army people, worked pretty hard, pretty committed, handed over a lot of my life.
Mm.
I was married when I deployed to Iraq,
Yep,
and that sort of didn't work. It sort of the rocks. It started not working as on deployment. It was
yep,
too much pressure on the relationship. Came back, was fixing it, got deployed straight to Rifle Company Butterworth, where I took over 150 guys to that, and it failed during that time. I
yep.
came back, and it was just toxic. And I was leaving on posting, so I left on posting, and so separated from my wife 2 weeks later, and I went home to my old man and mum and caught up with them and had some time away with them. And then the day I left, my old man got diagnosed with terminal cancer,
Mm.
passed away 6 weeks later. So,
Jeez, 6 weeks.
2 month period, I separated from wife and lost my dad. So it was a pretty full on experience. I then worked really hard for the next 12 months, um, drank, ate, was just
Yep,
a bit all over the place. Finished that and got staff college, and really took staff college as a year to just recalibrate, lose some weight. I ballooned out to 115 kilos, just get my life back in order. I'd had a pretty full on 12 months. And during that process, I realized I could see the writing on the wall for my promotion path. And none of the next 5 years of jobs really lit my fire. Um, I'd sacrificed a lot and sort of found myself in a place where I was pretty unhappy. Um, I then started seeing my current wife, Beck, and at the 6 month mark, she took us on a date to see Balboa, which was the movie of the five Australians that went over to East Timor to
oh yeah,
record the massacre.
the
Uh,
journalist. Yep.
yeah, back in 1979 or something. And the really romantic date.
Yeah.
Um, but that really just made me ask questions about what I wanted to do in the army. And the higher up we got, the less decision making we had, and the more we had to follow in with the politicians and what the politicians wanted. I had a heap of mates that were in political positions in Canberra, and I was just like, it just sounds so uninteresting. I'm not excited by that. And then I was talking to a brigadier who was a bit of a mentor of mine, and I said, how's your life been since you did this course 10, 15 years ago? And he said, I've worked harder every year since I did this course. And this year, I'm working harder than I've ever worked.
Wow.
And I went, that's like, there was nothing appealing for me over the next 15 years for that. And so I did another 18 months or so, but chose to leave as a result of that sort of positioning. Just accepted that I'd given as much as I wanted to give and wanted to go explore a life. Um, I didn't have any kids at the time. I'd seen so many mates deploy with kids being born and baby, and I wanted to be able to make a family that I loved and had, and made that a first choice.
It's funny. I I'm not an army hater. Army literally was the best job I've ever had in my life. Best times, best mates, best experiences. Like here I am 7 years later with the veteran business community because I'm so attached to that life. It doesn't, my military career no longer defines who I am or anything I do, but the connection through that experience is why I still do this. But again, joining the army at 30 it was a little bit different for me because I was never, well, so number one, I was never good enough to be a thrusting person eligible for staff college. So if you're listening and you don't know much about the military, this pathway adds on to get these courses and these promotions. It is a pathway to commands and higher success. But one of the things I learned early, and this is again just my opinion, is Army disappoints, or the Defense Force sooner or later disappoints everybody. Because even if you're chief of army, it's like it's this perpetual carrot in front of you that you never ever get to. It's the
Yeah.
next rank. It's like the next command. Even if you're chief of army, it's like, which is amazing, but you didn't make a chief of defense force. And even when you're chief of defense force, it must be like, hey, your time's come, you're done. So
Yeah.
every single person in the military, I think that if you're heading down that pathway, sooner or later, the military says, that's enough. On your way now.
And I agree. And I was definitely not on the pathway to CDF or anything, but I knew I was pretty competitive and doing okay. But I was, and you get hit all through your career. Like there's always
Yeah.
knockbacks, and it's how you bounce back. And I just chose like I left having loved my 17 years. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was really grateful for everything I got. I still am. Like the skills it's taught me, the connections I've got, the people you meet, the experiences you have, like amazing. But it was just my time, and I was
And And for those that do stick around, if anything, I just have even more admiration and respect for those people that reach senior leadership, whether it be the officers or they reach, sergeant, warrant officer in the ranks, because unless there is significant commitment, hardships, and personal sacrifice
sacrificed.
to get there. So for me, just hats off, literally to those people that crack on and continue to serve.
And I think
Um,
it's really interesting. Like we're recording this just before Anzac Day,
yeah,
and my discharge date is 27th of April.
yep,
So 2 days after Anzac Day, but also just like Anzac Day is all about remembering all those sacrifices and
yeah.
acknowledging all that hard work that everybody's done, and everybody who's ever served knows those sacrifices. And I take my hat off to everyone. It's amazing.
And that's really, it's that point in terms of the kind of people we are who have served is why I think we're such great business owners. And I was chatting to someone recently. I don't believe as Australian soldiers we deserve anything for our service. We're volunteers, we sign up. But I do, it doesn't mean we need to be treated specially because it's part of the Australian meritocratical or, more casual way of approaching things. We don't need thank you for your service. But it's our point of difference is that the people we are because of our service, problem solving, commitment, courage, character, that can be a great foundation for a great business owner. It doesn't mean you're automatically going to be a great business owner, but it is a solid foundation if you choose this pathway. So let's now explore, where do we get from soldier through to business owner, business coach?
Yeah. So, um, I'd always when I was in the army, I always thought, and I was 17 when I joined, and I remember the army committing to me till I was 55, thinking, "Wow, that's just like forever."
Yeah.
And I always thought I'll get out to something better, and I
Mm.
actually ended up getting out to nothing. And I just went, I need to create a gap. I had long service leave and all that, and I just went, I'm not gonna go out and look for anything or do anything. I'm just gonna go out and see what happens. And I was doing some personal development stuff on all the, like, specifically the separation of my dad passing away and
Yeah.
Iraq and all that stuff. Dealing with any um, trauma, personal stuff that had come up. And as a result of that, I was sort of talking to a heap of people, and I just was talking. I ended up in coffee shops and talking to business owners, um, and at that stage, I was in Canberra, and we were going through a life thing of, well, hang on, what are we doing in Canberra? We could be anywhere in the world. Starting off this journey, where do we want to be? And so we started exploring where we wanted to live, and that's how we chose the Gold Coast. We wanted beach, we wanted close to airports to get out, and we wanted lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um,
Mate, if I can just pause there, it would be remiss of me not to just ask you about your Iraq experience, obviously a very defining point in your life and career. Can you share a little bit? What was your role in Iraq?
so I was posted in with the British Army, and I was in the engineer J9 cell in
Mm-hmm.
divisional headquarters, and I had a dual role of um, one of three engineers in the J9 cell, and then also the engineer for the British Engineer Battalion that was the engineer battalion for the brigade in the division. Um, and
Mate,
so
I've had to Google J9. I was good with my one, two, three, four, five, six, sevens. What's the nine staff shop?
so CIMIC engineer
Ah,
works. So I sort of worked for the Chief J9, who was the CIMIC, like, outreach, the civil military liaison,
yeah.
and the chief engineer. So
Whereabouts in Iraq were you based? Oh, I never went to Iraq either, so it's
down
not my trip.
southeast in Basra,
Yeah.
so just on the Kuwaiti border.
And what years of the conflict was this?
6, 7, I think.
Okay, so six, seven,
Maybe.
still in, dare I say, full swing.
Yeah. So when I arrived, it was pretty relaxed. The As I landed, we got an IDF attack, and
Yep.
so the base was being bombed. We had to rush out of the planes and were bunkered down behind concrete um, force protection. There were guys delivering pizzas to everyone that had been through it before. They were all ordering
Yeah.
pizza. And I remember turning to my offsider who I was taking over from, and I said, "Jimmy, how often does this happen?" He said, "Oh, it's happened 3 times in the last 6 months." I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So by the time I left, we were getting bombed every day.
Yeah.
It was a significant transition in power. I was there when Saddam Hussein was actually electrocuted when he was
Oh,
killed.
wow. Yeah.
That happened in Baghdad, and I was just telling a mate this morning the exact time that it happened. We lost power in Basra, 400 k's south.
All
Like,
right.
just uncanny um, how it
It's
happened.
I was not a combat soldier, but I do remember the first, I was a camp guy. I spent most of my time with in a bed with a cappuccino every day.
Yeah,
But I do remember the first couple of IDFs that come in, like it's, just freaks you out. But after, a few of them, it's just like pause, wait, bang, crack on, away we go. And like, again, I'm not someone who's an out the wire combat kind of guy. So, but it is definitively a moment of you're there and there's things, the realities of warfare, and that what's happening around you.
yeah,
Um, okay, let's get back into business. Uh,
Oh,
Tell us first. Yeah.
I was exploring businesses, and I just started talking to them, and I saw the challenge for most businesses was that they had an intent of what they wanted to achieve in the business, and they were doing it, but there was
Mm.
nothing in this gap, and they were
Yep.
just hoping that doing would get them there. And for most of them, it didn't. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years into it, they were still spinning their wheels, not really getting any closer to the real profitability point of their business venture. And so I just started talking to them about the strategy and how to structure what they wanted to achieve and make it simple so that they could start implementing strategies or tactics that are going to move them forward.
But was
Um,
this just an extrapolation of your military experiences migrated across?
I think so. Well, to start with, definitely, because I had no idea about business. I'd been handed a paycheck every fortnight for 17 years.
Yep.
Like a budget was just something you spent. It wasn't something you needed to manage and make sure it delivered a
Let
return.
alone earn.
Yeah, and never had to justify money for myself. Like the hardest thing I found in my first 5 years, maybe more, was justifying the fee I wanted for the intellectual services that I was going to deliver. That it wasn't a tangible, here's this cup and
Mm.
buy for it. Um, and just bridging that gap, people I was working with got really good results. I was doing a lot of it for free just to start off with because I wasn't in that headspace. And then they started paying me, and it just sort of grew from that.
Can I ask a little bit about that first kind of product or the first kind of model? Because I have a big uh, worthiness battle when it comes to pricing a lot of times, particularly, I remember the first systemize your business workshop I ever did. I think I charged $700 and I hired the room and I paid for lunch. And at the end of it, I was just like, mate, how good is that?
Yeah,
And now like that, we just don't, it's not even worth our time to do that work anymore, let alone charge for it. So how did you go through this machinations of internal worthiness when it comes to pricing yourself properly?
yeah. Not very well, I think. Like I struggled with it, particularly in the early days. Like it was a fight and it was a battle, um, and I was an unproven entity as well. Um, so it took me a while to one, get my confidence, and two, create the structure that showed the value. And as soon as I got that balance right of being able to actually show how I was going to support people and show
Yep.
what the reality was, it changed. As soon as I got runs on the board with people as well, that all changed quickly. Like
Yeah.
as soon as I had businesses that I'd helped add 20,000 a month in revenue, add like secure big contracts or whatever it was, um, it becomes a lot easier to talk to. But you like the name of the podcast about mindset, like it is such a mindset thing. It's a you can't charge more than you're able to charge more for. Like I could have a $2,000 an hour service, but if my head can't get to that, I'll never be able to charge it.
Absolutely. Even just the way that you would walk into the room and deliver, whether you felt, if I was going into someone $100,000 a day, to be honest, I'm literally not worth that at the moment. I wouldn't. That's not something that I would offer. So if I walked into the room, would I feel confident? Would I feel all over it? Yet, we don't need to talk about prices for me or anything, but I just find it a fascinating journey from soldier, sailor, and M, and this worthiness and pricing when it comes to business, because we do come from a somewhat service mentality of wanting to help, support, or do, but fundamentally, we are in business for our personal and financial goals. So profitability. Now, I've done nearly $20 million worth of revenue since I've left the army, but that's not profit. It
No,
doesn't
no, no.
make me and these are two very definitive words, what a resilient, successful business needs to come through.
Yeah, and a lot of people have done $20 million in turnover and had $19,950,000 in expenses,
If not debt, if not more.
if not more, if not
Yeah.
$21 million. Yeah,
Yeah.
and and it's And I think also it's that mindset of owning up that hang on, you are in this to make money.
Yeah. And
Like,
that's okay.
and it's 100% okay.
Yeah.
To be honest, if you're not in it to make money, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
Now, there's obviously the swings of the roundabout where people just take advantage and try and make too much money. But in that sweet spot, um,
I would like to think, and it's not, I would like to think that again, using the character that comes out of military service, that the way we operate in business, particularly from an ethics perspective, again, should be our point of difference. Uh, you know, I just want to go back to something you said earlier about the grind. Now a lot of people use the grind as a bit of a badge of honor, and I've done it myself, but really, we've got to break that mentality. It's martyrdom. The grind is what the senior soldiers and senior officers do as they service their career. They grind harder and harder and harder. But in business, there is times to surge, but there's a difference between having a light at the end of the tunnel and what you were talking before about people who just continue to spin the wheels year after year in the grind. What do you see in your experience that really is the breaking point, or when we finally hatch out of that mold?
I think the army does an amazing job of creating people that approach their job or their role in the army with I've got to grind and work really hard. And I remember when I was a young captain, I walked into a mate was in the headquarters, and I walked in and I said, "Hey, you're going to come out. We're going for a few beers." And he said, "Oh no, I've got to hang around for a little bit." I'm like, "What are you working on? Surely there's not much going on at the moment. What are you working on?"
Mm.
And he said, "I've just got to stay in the office until the boss leaves, then I'll leave."
Yeah.
So he was only in there just to be seen by the boss. And
It doesn't
I,
mean you're going to get a better report, or maybe it
mm,
does.
it's that perception. It's that perception that somebody's always willing to work harder and longer, not smarter, but harder and
Yeah.
longer. And I think that's a like I imagine most people would have seen it. I saw it all the time of people were elevated in performance because they worked longer hours,
Yeah.
not
I
necessarily
got
better.
I got a funny story. I was in headquarters forces command in beautiful Paddington. I was a Sydney soldier, mate. That's terrible. Spent most of my career in Paddington and Coogee and Randwick. Um, but I was there, marched into headquarters forces command, and there was this warrant officer. I won't mention his name, but 20 to 4 every day, just walk out, be like, see you later. And we'd be sitting there just going, the fuck's this guy's going, mate? It's 20 to 4, not, it was, life in the barracks was good there. It was only 8 to 4. So it wasn't a hard day as it was, and that included PT, morning tea, squash at lunch, showers after
Coffee
squash.
at Coogee or
Yeah,
down at the shop. Yeah.
but 20 to 4, he would just walk out and we'd be like, what the fuck's this guy doing, mate? And then, you know what? No one once all year said anything. He just set the precedent. Is that this is my whole time? Yeah, as a warrant officer, good luck to him. But he
Yeah.
just set the precedent that these are the rules. I'm going home now. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. But as
And I
a,
think there's two people in that thing. There's the what do we call them? Skivers, the people
yeah,
that
yeah,
approach their job like that, and they did go for the least effort, happy to cruise through and do the minimum. But then there's the others, and like yeah, yeah,
he was not that. He was wily and smart. Knew his
yeah.
job was done. Just went home. So, but again, but coming back to business, again, this
And
sort of
so that's
martyrdom. After
so
you,
there's a tipping point that needs to happen for that transfer from military mindset into business mindset.
yeah, agree.
And that like and like one of my roles is helping people get rid of more stuff so they can focus on the right things and do them better. Like
Yeah,
we naturally as humans take on more, say yes, and as business owners we're stuck in doing everything and being involved in everything. And that shift is that you're not better off. Like the military has a principle of three, which is 3 to 5. You should only have 3 to 5 layers of command or 3 to 5 anything that you're working on at any one time.
hmm,
So I've got 3 platoons in a company. We've got 3 companies in a battalion. Um, and that's your span of ability to influence anything. So
yep,
anything above 3 to 5, you're going to struggle to do it well. And for most businesses, they have 10 projects on, 15 projects on that they're across. And if we can bring that down to three and get them doing it really well, their business will progress far faster than spinning on 10. And that's around they're working hard is doing 10, 15 things.
Mm.
The changing that and doing it well is what's the most important thing I need to progress this week, this month, and focusing on that.
Let's
It's
achieve
a big
that.
mindset shift for it, and there's no five things you need to do to change that mindset. A lot of people need to get to that point, and when they're ready to hear it, they'll start listening.
And this relates back to another military principle of how we structure our planning, which is current operations or 3-3 and future operations, which is 3-5, and planning, which is 5-shop. But for me, current operations is the thing that traps us as business owners. Like it's our revenue cycle. It is this sale, this contact, this phone call, this message, this email, this bill, this invoice, this task.
Yeah,
And we spend so much of our time spinning in that current operations phase, which normally lasts, depending on the business, between today and about 2 to 3 months' time.
yeah.
Uh, how do you find as a business coach breaking people out of the mentality and getting them to think about what do I need today? Sorry, what do I need to do today? Because if I don't do it today, it won't occur for 6 months' time or 18 months' time, and start getting that future operations or even, God forbid, planning mindset going.
Yeah. Uh, Hugely like life changing for people that can make that transition from focusing on 3-3-5 to getting
Yep.
the five front of mind. Um, and so I think like one of the things the army really trained us on to do is the strategic planning, particularly in the combat arms, that military appreciation process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if we look at the campaign mission objective, then there's all these other objectives and missions that are nested below it. That if all these low end missions happen, they go towards the big picture.
Yep.
And it's transitioning a business into that concept. So the operational delivery is just one component of your week in, week out. You need to
Yeah.
add time to this to have projects that are going towards your growth that need to happen every month. And so we have a nested approach of 12-month game plan, 90-day roadmap,
Yep.
and 30-day battle plan. It's a bit of a steal from the army, but that battle plan is a real one pager. What do I need to do this month so that I'm not thinking about it? Like one of the problems a lot of people have is go, okay, I need to work on lead generation. Okay, turn up Monday morning and go, I'm going to work on lead generation now. And then they go, oh, what do I do? And they got
Yeah.
no idea. And they spin for an hour trying to drag stuff. They get caught in a CRM, whatever they're doing, getting a pretty social post. Whereas if you think once and then set up the month so that you know what you've got to do and you can start factoring in when, you just start doing the big picture, the big movements that are going to get you to your 90-day goals, which then if you do that 4 times a year, that you'll then smash out your 12 months. And we find most people that follow the process will achieve their 12-month goals in about 8 or 9 months. Their 3 year goals in about 18 months, just because they're doing small incremental movements on a regular basis. And that's
Yeah. I love
like, it's
this.
a simple concept, but it's so critical. Like,
Because ultimately, if you are a solopreneur or you have a small team, there's no one else out there do it but you. So you need that. Well, again, it's so easy to get spun in current ops. I'm just too busy. How do I find
customer
the time to
complains,
create
you've
the
got to
time
put
to
out that
spend the
fire.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the model that you've got in the business league, tell me how does your actual coaching model work?
So I've been doing it for 15 years now,
Yep.
and we've sort of played with all models. And I think there's two things that have really resonated with me. One of them is the what are my strengths and what do I enjoy most?
Yep.
And two is what do the actual clients need? And I think across the spectrum of all different types of business coachings, from a group model through to a highly intensive one-on-one model, my strengths are sitting down with somebody and helping them get clear on what they're really trying to achieve, and then focusing in on how to do that in the best possible way. Um, and that's one on one. So I've brought that back in, and I spend time with my clients on a regular basis. As a result of that, there's a number of different levels they can come in at that hits their budget, hits their need, and the time they get with me changes on that level. So at the low end, we've got a community level, which has got a heap of done for you resources that you can just drop into your business to get results quicker. We've got group support calls, one-on-one support, and then we've got specific packages for, like, let's say somebody's needing more lead gen.
Yep.
There's a lead gen segment that we can just do and dial in on that and get that functioning in their business. I find that as soon as people get more leads and convert them better, it allows you the capacity to grow your business properly. If you're trying to grow your business while leads are always a problem, it's just hard work and you go up and down.
You did you start the business with Rebecca? Because she was a high performing individual herself.
Yeah, played for 2 state teams at netball, travelled overseas working, and was pretty competitive. No, we started off separately,
Yep.
and started doing our own things. And then it just sort of, there was so much cross work that we were doing that it just made sense to bring it together.
Mm.
And our first business, we were sitting down when we decided to bring it together. We were sitting down working out what our business name was going to be, and we
Yeah.
started playing rock paper scissors for it. So we put a name up. She'd have one name, I'd have another name. Whoever won it, that name got through to the next round. And as we were doing that, we said, "Oh, why don't we use the name rock paper scissors?" So we were rock paper scissors coaching for a couple of years in the
Yeah.
early. So
Well, one of the things I like about the business league is league collective momentum, and again, why we've deliberately called this thing the veteran business community is because uh, there is learning by yourself, and then there's learning in cohorts. And one of the things I really believe, it's like business is a little bit like fitness and money. There's always going to be someone, well, certainly for me, more fit and more rich than I am. And I'm also very blessed that I'm probably further ahead than someone else. So when it comes to our business experience, we're all in our different spots on the ladder, and our individual experiences mean there's always something to learn and always something to share. And I think
yeah,
that's one of the most powerful things about our community is that the humility to be able to share, the humility to be able to learn regardless of who you are and where you've come from, but also that other side of it that you get to share and help somebody else.
yeah, hugely powerful. And I think that mindset of learning is so critical. And I see people go, "I know enough and I'm good," and they stay at that level. And then there's people that go, "I just want to keep learning." And we wrote a book 5, 6 years ago on leadership for small businesses, and it was a bit of a manual. Went to #1 bestseller. But in that journey, we interviewed a heap of really successful business owners, and one of them was a guy called Murray Dalmeda who started Donut King.
Yeah.
And I became friends with him, and I used to run luncheons where I'd get breweries to come in with all different beers, and they'd match food to the beers, and then the
Yeah.
brewery owners would talk about them and do that. And he came to one, and he was scribbling away, and he was 75 years old at this one, and he's scribbling away, writing down during one of them talking. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, there's so much I'm learning here. This is gold." And I'm like,
Yeah.
75, he started a multi-million-dollar global company, and he's still learning.
Learning.
I got a lot
I
of
love
learning
it.
to do.
Well, and
And
it's funny. There is no industry, I believe, that teaches you better than the military. There are so many courses, the courses for this, courses for that, promotion courses. You run another course at least every year.
yeah,
No matter how you go up the ladder, you've got your, whether it be Kapuka, and then you go to your trade school, and then you go to your promotion school. And then in the senior leadership of officers, you've got school all the way up to your brigadiers. But
yeah,
I've actually, you mentioned something before is, I think I know enough. I felt myself that I was a bit stagnated in my professional development because, I've started a couple of successful businesses, but I did need to be challenged again. And sometimes having that external coach, I'm a waffler. to be able to spit your ideas out and have to somebody help give you clarity and focus.
Yeah.
And that's something that I personally struggle with is I love to chase rabbits, and quite often I don't catch many, but having someone there to support you with clarity and focus. And immediately I've seen things being able to just get done, ticking things over.
Yeah.
So
I think a good example of that for you is the shift with VBC.
yeah.
Once you got focused in on that, you've shifted it really quickly, and it's there's a whole new lease of life, energy, and momentum, and it's really exciting because of that.
Yeah. And I'm really pumped for it. Um,
So
look,
just the other one I was going to mention on that, you talked about that community and having community, and I've just been talking a bit about this in my world. One of our approaches is a rising tide lifts all ships.
absolutely. I love that
I,
saying. Yeah.
I think that VBC, like having that strong network of people that are challenging each other, supporting each other, encouraging each other, helping each other, and just sharing is really amazing. And like I've got clients from 10 years ago that still turn up to our 2 day events because they just want to be challenged. They know that it doesn't matter what level of business I'm at compared to everyone else, they know they'll come up with one idea that pays for the next 12 months. And it's that
And
being
where
around community to do that.
and where we so my goal ultimately with VBC is not about me or my individual success. It is going to be when the community has that snowball momentum and there is engagement, nothing to do with me or VBC or the headquarters, but we have created enough collective engagement that people are looking inside the community for other options and for referral opportunities and to shop where we earn because we're looking after each other. And then collectively, again, that rising tide as we push the narrative around why veteran business ownership is so important. What it does not only for our community, but for the broad Australian community and why we actually matter as business owners. So, a couple of things that we're doing together is I'm going to be running a boot camp every quarter. And Edward and I have built the methodology together of some of the work that he's done over the last couple of years. A 6-week program. We're kicking the first one off in May 2025, but they're going to be running every quarter if you're listening to this later. We also want to be able to give you the opportunity, if you need individual coaching, to speak to Ed directly. I'm going to be doing more low-level collective support. Whereas from my experience with, Ed and the Business League, having someone who's been a sounding board for me and being able to get real clarity on what I needed to do next has been something that I've got to say, just grateful for. And I've appreciated your support in my development.
Thank you. Um, I think it's an exciting time. I'm so excited to be involved back in VBC. I've probably done. I think a lot of army people or defence people do it, where they leave defence and then they have a hiatus from anything defence.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm on the swing now, back enjoying defence connections and being around ex-defence people a lot more. But I think that in anything in life, you can do it on your own and you'll get a certain result. You can research, find it out. Like going to the gym, you can do it on your own and push weights and you'll get a certain level. You can join a group thing where you'll be around people that support you and you'll get a next level of fitness or whatever it is in business. But then the next level on that is that one-on-one support where you've got somebody showing you that technique is wrong. You need to shift this little thing and it'll all work better.
Man,
And
I love that analogy and I've never clicked because I've worked with a couple of gym owners in my business and I used to always say the triangle of a great dream, the triangle of a great gym is number one, results. What are the results you're going to get? Number two, it's the trainers and it's the people instructing and guiding you on the journey. But number three, it's the community. And as a gym owner, if any of those are three, like the pyramid of fire or whatever it is, isn't there, then we start to churn and we start to fizzle out. So, and I really feel like that's applicable to us here as well. Hey Edward, on the 14th of May, 2025, we'd love to invite you back to host a lunch in the mess series. Basically, in these lunches in the messes, it's an opportunity for we'll come in and share some more detail about what you do and why coaching is important, but also give everybody the opportunity for a one-to-one chat. what I'd love you to share with us, Edward, is you've got 5 key sort of functions or pillars of an indicator of a strong business. Can you just share with us these 5 benchmarks that you've got?
Sweet. So I learned this off a guy that is pretty amazing called Alex Hormozy. So I just
Yeah,
recognize his content in this, but it's you do a self audit across 5 levels for your business, and you score yourself between 1 and 5. 1 is rubbish; it's not working at all. It's poor. 5
yeah,
is it's happening effortlessly, quite often without you. You're getting amazing results consistently. Score yourself somewhere in between those on this. The first one is lead generation. Are you
yeah,
consistently delivering the leads you need for growth? Not for survival, for growth. The second one is lead nurture. Are you, those leads that haven't converted, are you nurturing them and putting yourself in the best spot to get them as a client in the future? Number 3 is converting. Are you converting them at a high percent? Most businesses go, I need more leads. But the reality is, if you improved your conversion by 10, 15,
yeah.
20%, you no longer have a lead problem and you've suddenly got a delivery problem. That leads into number 4, your delivery. Is that delivering an amazing experience? Are your customers really happy? Um, how are you, is your business between 1 and 5 in the delivery component? Then number 5 is a lot of research has shown that it's easier to sell to somebody who's already bought from you. So number 5 is upsell retention. Are you retaining people longer? Are you upselling more into them and increasing their lifetime value to your business? Whichever is your weakest in those 5, where you need to start.
I'd give everyone a challenge out there that's listening right now. So give yourself a quick score 1 to 5. Now, lead generation, now lead nurture, conversion, delivery, or retention slash upsell. If you're not hitting at least 3 to 4 on every one of those, I recommend you come along and have a chat and challenge Ed at Lunch in a Mess. Let's talk about your situation and see if we can create some opportunities for you. Hey Edward, one of the things that I've heard you talk about is your business auditing and how you can go in and do a deep dive into a business. Apart from those 5, what are you sort of looking at, and what kind of results would you expect from someone that you get out of an audit?
So I think it comes into the mindset here a little bit. And one is the mindset of doing something yourself means you've got your filters on and you're looking at
Yep.
it through your prism. When I come in and do it, I come in externally and I'm looking at the whole picture from on top, and I'm not emotionally invested or involved in any of it. So I can see it a lot clearer than perhaps somebody in the inside. I've got 10 categories that I go through. Some businesses I won't go through the last 4 or 5 because it's just too much and we don't need to.
Yep.
Uh, and a lot of it, we do a SWOT analysis on the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats on it, and explore and just identify quite often where money's being left on the table.
Yeah.
And did one 2 days ago, and probably have found 20,000 recurring in their business. That'll, like, in the next 12 months, that'll equate to $280,000 worth of revenue.
And
Uh,
that's yeah.
like
And I guess
it's
what
and
mentioning
most businesses have so much opportunity that they're just not doing well, and as a result, missing out on money.
and I think this what you mentioned then is an external approach and also a non-emotional approach. This is our baby, this thing, like we know everything, or we
Yeah,
think we do. We've built this thing from scratch.
and it's really challenging because, like, a lot of the time I'll talk to them and they go, "Yeah, I know that," and so it's not like I'm telling them something new a lot of the times, and they know it, but they've never done anything about it, or they've never had it smack them in the forehead so strongly so that they can see how much money they're missing out on because they're not doing it. Like these simple tactics that I'm talking about for this doctor that I've just worked with, $20,000 a month. It's
Yep.
simple for her to change it, but she'd never. As soon as I said not doing those 5 things is means you're missing out on $20,000 this month, that suddenly becomes really
Hang on. Did you
important to change.
did you say not doing those things? So actually doing less things can actually create more growth.
A little bit, but what I'm saying is there were 5 things that she needed to do to
Yep.
create $20,000.
Yeah.
By doing those, she can realize that money. But by not doing them, she's missing out on 20 grand every month. So the more you procrastinate on getting those 5 things done, the more money you're missing out on.
Yeah.
And in 6 months'
Brilliant.
time, if you haven't started, you've just lost $120,000.
Mate, thebusinessleague.com.au is the website. Everyone connect with Ed on LinkedIn. We'll throw that into the show notes. We are coming back together on the 14th of May at 1 o'clock Sydney time to come and have a chat. So come along and meet Ed one-to-one, and let's see if we can find missing money in your business.
Yeah, loved it. Listen, Pete, just for myself, love what you're doing, love the community you've built, and big pat on the back for your perseverance. I know how hard building a big community is because we've done that in a couple of businesses. But well done, you're doing awesome. And anyone wants to reach out and ask me any question, listen, I'm just happy to help. Um, and I'd prefer help you than you stay quiet and not ask.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that, mate. Have from being someone who has personally been involved with Ed and Ed's coaching of me, game changing for me. So I don't want to blow too much smoke, mate. Otherwise, it'll look like a thin veneer. But no, it has been really important and influential for me. So, and just on your note there about the community, is I really do believe, I don't know why, but in the veteran business community, in terms of the latent capacity that just sits there within us, that is ready to be unleashed and nurtured. And it's not about to throw me a bone or pat me in the head or say thanks for my service. I guess that it was such an important time of my life, and great friends, great times, great experiences. That when you meet with somebody, with a shared life, it's just a great propensity. Number one, for companionship, and number two, to do great business together.
Yeah.
So I love it, mate.
We've
Thanks for
like
your time.
a lot of fun.
Thanks for your time. This is Pete Liston. See you later.
See you later.